Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Friday Fireside. We are so thrilled to have Syed on, and I just want to do a quick wrap up of the week because there's been so much that's gone on. Thank you so much for everyone who pledged and shared our story or participated in our campaigns. It was so fantastic. We're really digesting all of the lessons from that, but we're just keep coming back to how grateful we are for everyone who did contribute in any way they could. It really was a great success. So thank you very much for that. And essentially, yeah, we're just going to be getting ready for the 16 days of activism, and we have a few other updates that we'll keep you posted on. But without further ado, I want to dive into this really good conversation that we have for you, and do ask your questions. We will make sure that we have time for that, although it's going to be a quick conversation. um, so yes, so Deeba is a qualified lawyer. She works and runs the Rights of Women campaign and hotline. And this she specializes in sexual harassment in the workplace. She's also a political activist and has recently been shortlisted from the Law Society Excellent Awards for Access to Justice. So I'm really pleased to have her on the show. Please help me welcome Deeba. Hi, Deeba.
Hello.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. I love
Or
Halloween.
I know. Oh, I saw your Instagram story with the Adams Family, and I had to watch it after because I also have an obsession with one of those two characters. So maybe just as the starting point, is it Morticia or is it Wednesday that you love more?
Oh my God. I gotta say Wednesday, she's like such a feminist icon.
I love it.
And
Yes.
I never had so much reaction to an Instagram story than when I was talking about the Addams family. Like literally so many people being like, I'm obsessed with the Addams family women. And I'm like, me too. We can
They
just,
they are
can we just
powerful.
acknowledge how great they were?
It's so true. And I think that was probably my under 10 most frequent costume. And to boot, this was something that I dressed up in one year when I was living in Yemen. So it was probably even more of a very odd kind of, pale white, black dress.
Yeah,
But it was
iconic, iconic.
well, I know that we couldn't dress up today. I did put a little bit of fancy makeup, so I'll take a picture of the
Yeah,
gory fun stuff later. But we do
yeah,
have a serious conversation coming up. But
yeah.
maybe just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Um, who am I? Well, yeah, as you say, I'm an employment lawyer, and my specialism is in sexual harassment in the workplace. I was brought in to Rights of Women. Rights of Women have been giving free legal advice since the 1970s. They are right from the women's liberation movement. And one of the key kind of components of gender equality, okay, if women are going to have gender equality, they need to have access to legal advice
Mm.
to enforce their rights, to have access to their rights. So Rights of Women have been given free legal advice on family law, immigration law, criminal law, and they're focused on violence against women issues. But employment law was always kind of seen as sort of a bit of a luxury. We were kind of dealing with the more physical violence, like domestic abuse. Well, not just physical, but I don't know, more serious, I want to say. And people kind of like, I think people still see sexual harassment in the workplace as kind of less serious.
Mm.
Um, but what we've seen, and after the Me Too movement, especially, hashtag Me Too, I'm going to say, because we know the Me Too movement was started before, but
Mhm.
2017 social media Me Too movement, we saw, so many women coming forward talking about sexual violence in the workplace and the power dynamics that happen in the workplace. And then from the Time's Up movement, um, so much money was generated that they were able to use some of this money to actually fund services that are dedicated to sexual harassment in the workplace. And that's where I came in to Rights for Women and set up this um, it's the only one of its kind in England and Wales. It is a specialist service for women by women,
Right.
um, and really what we do is we just make people feel believed. We give them
Wow.
confidence
Yeah.
and we make them feel believed, and um, that's what the problem is when you experience sexual harassment in the workplace. You just think no one's gonna take it seriously and believe you, and um, that doesn't happen when you call us. You're straight through to an expert who, and you're talking to a woman, so they're just able to identify with what you're saying, and there isn't any victim blaming or kind of inappropriate questions like, well, what were you wearing, and did you flirt with him, and well, you're very attractive, so of course he's going to do that. Obviously there's none of that with us.
Yeah.
um
We need a
we
big
can
kind
kind
of wrong misinformation just coming on the screen when you say that, just to make it clear that that is never acceptable.
Yeah, and I think the truth is, though, is when you're in that situation, that we have very when I say we, I think certain people have very entrenched beliefs about what sexual harassment is,
Mhm.
and the reaction women get when they are experiencing this and they finally ask for some help is really surprising. You get a lot of minimizing what happened to them, and sort of we hear this all the time when women call the advice line. They're told, well, I'm sure he didn't mean it like that.
Right.
And you know it's not as if he touched you, it's not as if he assaulted you. And so it's kind of you kind of see that a lot of what we're up against is just kind of very internalized views of at what level should women be complaining about this kind of.
Right.
Even though sexual harassment is against the law, right? You're not allowed to do it in the workplace. It is covered by the Equality Act. It it's been established since the 80s,
Mhm.
but we are still in 2020. We've got people responding with, um, "Well, it's just a joke."
Yeah. It's just
So yeah,
an antiquated things that we've internalized, and we've heard that messaging over and over through so many different forms that it does make it so much more difficult to come forward. I posted something the other day about Susie Lambeth Trust, and they were talking about stalking, and that you can have two incidents that can qualify as stalking, but usually on average, people wait till there's 100 incidents before they do something. Have you seen those types of patterns of how much has to happen before someone feels ready to come forward?
I wish we had a number like that because we've only been open 1 year. And we've got some stats for that, which we're going to release into a report. But having
Amazing.
something like but sexual harassment, it isn't really identified properly as a
Mhm.
type of violence against women. Um, so there aren't that kind. There isn't. So the government's never collected data on sexual harassment in the workplace. But our data shows that nearly half of all of our callers over the past year, they report to us that they've been sexually assaulted in the workplace. So that is, non-consensual sexual touching. Um, and I think that gives you an idea of the kind of scale we're talking about, because I'm people are still going to me, oh, but this is just a bunch of jokes, and I'm saying, no, no, I'm talking about women who've been sexually assaulted in the workplace.
Mhm.
So we think the situation is, even more serious than people have even truly kind of understood it to be.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, we get calls. We are seeing a rise of calls in women who are being stalked. So this was something we saw, especially at the beginning of the lockdown. Women who had already experienced harassment from somebody. This intensified over the lockdown, and
Mm.
what was a harassment situation, quickly escalating into a stalking situation. Um, and stalking is a difficult one because it can take a long time for a woman to kind of say that word out loud or kind of identify this is stalking behavior.
Mhm.
I was speaking to a woman recently who was just afraid to say the S word. She couldn't say it, stalking. Um, and it takes a professional sometimes to explain it to you. This sounds like, to me, this is, possibly stalking behavior. And that can be extremely heavy, extremely emotionally difficult to kind of comprehend. And I get that same thing when I'm explaining to a woman what sexual harassment is. I can hear that like sharp inhalation in her breath when she's acknowledging that this is sexual harassment, because so much of it is, as you say, you're just saying, oh, it's not that bad, maybe I'm just thinking the worst here, or if I kind of ignore this for a while, maybe it will go away. And then that dawning on you, we call it the drip drip effect, where um it's just that dawning when you're just like, oh no, this is the actual situation I'm in. I'm being sexually harassed, and then you've got the uphill mountain of convincing other people that,
Yes.
when you're struggling to believe it as well. So yeah, it's
Uh,
exhausting.
I mean, you are seriously pushing an iceberg through, terrain that isn't water. It's just you're
Yeah.
right, and even the people who call you. I was listening to another podcast interview, and you were talking about we're only getting the probably more privileged people in positions where they do have the ability to maybe switch jobs or think about their legal rights or maybe have some funds to support, moving ahead with that. So
Yeah.
when we're looking at that entirety, and I'm really glad that you use the word violence against women, because this is part of that spectrum, and this is, a very normalized and, experienced form of that. How
Mhm.
I mean, what do you think we can do to help support the widening of this message that this is something that's experienced probably universally, and how do we start encouraging more vulnerable groups to be able to share?
Yeah, and I think that is so, because we talk a lot about in sexual harassment in the workplace, we talk a lot about cultural change, and everyone's like, yes, yes, we've got to have cultural change, and then no one really knows what that means or how to do it. Um, so I think there does need to be
Write a policy, right?
more.
That's all that needs to
Yeah,
happen.
it's almost like write a policy,
A
but like
memo.
really, we want women to not be experiencing this in the first place. Like, what are you going to do to prevent it happening in the first place? And
Mhm.
I think what you're saying is right, that about a cultural shift, because I think the way that we kind of treat survivors who come forward, it's always like putting this magnifying glass on them, and please tell us this horrific story that happened to you. And there's kind of this grotesque um, glorification, or kind of, I don't know, something that makes me feel uncomfortable. And
Mm,
we kind of have to move away from that and
yeah.
be just a bit more, kind of believe women, just very simply, and just trying to treat them with empathy, and just kind of understanding that this is real, and not kind of, I don't know, I feel like this is a personal opinion that I have that's a bit controversial. But I think when we kind of, I don't know, like, I wish we could kind of get to the place where, like, reporting was normalized, but
Mm,
when women come forward, they're still kind of treated like they're made out of china, and, they're highly, highly traumatized by what's happened. But this should be as simple as, like, reporting a health and safety breach.
yeah.
I would like it to be like, you know, this is, especially in a role where harassment is kind of something that can be foreseen. So, for example, a woman who's a waitress, or she's working
Mm,
in a bar, or these kind of things where it's kind of foreseeable that harassment's going to happen. It's a bit of an occupational hazard, especially when you're working with the public, or you're working with alcohol.
mhm.
Um, it
Or
should be like,
maybe you're supposed to be sexualized in what you wear, or, the
exactly.
kind of environment that you're working in.
So why can't an employer just kind of realize that's true, and say, right, well, what am I going to do to make you safe? What am I going to do if somebody's bothering you? What is our system here
Mm,
when you're working in that bar and you've got a customer that is being saying sexual things to you or won't leave you alone? There should just be a system in place where, right, well, we go up to that customer and we tell him, give them a warning, and we say, if you do this one more time, you're out the bar. You could have systems in place, and they can be
yes.
effective.
I
But
feel
we
like this
still,
needs to be a fire alarm procedure because it's so common and we really should have these structural, normalized kind of, yeah,
exactly.
frameworks around it. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we're kind of still in the place where we go, "Oh, sexual harassment, like, you really using that word? You really go in there?" Um, and, I believe, I genuinely believe that, harassment is preventable,
Mhm,
it is solvable. It's only when you have this mindset where, well, you're never gonna, if you adopt the mindset that men have the right to kind of make sexual advances, and if you kind of don't question that assumption, then you can never kind of see a world where harassment isn't there. And it
mhm,
depends what kind of worldview you adopt, right? Because it's the same with public harassment, right? If
mhm.
you kind of accept that, oh, but men are allowed to have a crack at women, that's how it should
Yeah, that's
be.
their masculinity coming in and,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then we start challenging that kind of entitlement. Well, men aren't entitled. If you believe that men are not entitled to do that, and we kind
Mhm.
of enforce that to men and say, no, you don't have the right to do that, and there isn't a situation where it's okay to just be sexual with a woman, like, for example, a waitress, or people have this kind of, I don't know, they think that there is some kind of permission to treat women in that certain way, if they're especially if they're doing certain roles. And
Mm.
we kind of have to challenge those um assumptions that we're kind of not thinking about,
Yeah,
kind of
that's
take for
very
granted.
true. And I mean, the breadth that you do as well, because I know that you're also supporting the Our Streets Now girls with their public street harassment, which you mentioned. How did you get
Yeah.
involved in that, and what similarities and differences do you see in public street harassment and workplace?
Well, it took me about 5 seconds doing this job to realize that this isn't just a problem in the workplace. Like, this is a problem with sexual violence and the way we treat women, and it's about misogyny, and it's about male entitlement. And I'm just doing my bit in the workplace, and Our Streets Now are doing their bit in the in public and in the street. But it's so obvious to me that these things are all interconnected with the ways, well, I mean, just like I was saying, like, just the kind of assumptions that some people have about what is acceptable
Mm,
in terms of how to treat women. And I think that's why I'm really pro their campaign, because I think it would also benefit the work I do, because employment law, there are lots of gaps there. So, for example, the gap I was just talking about, employment law works that employers are liable for all their employees' behaviours. So, but if you're being sexually harassed by a member of the public,
right.
so let's say you're a waitress and you have a customer that comes in and harasses you every day, um, which many waitresses do, and I certainly had that when I was working as a waitress years ago. An employer can and do turn around and say, right, well, he's not our employee. We can't do anything about this. This is just a member of the public.
Yeah.
You have to, go to the police or something if you want to do something about this. Um, so that's such a huge gap. And I think if we had proper public sexual harassment law, we could address some of those gaps.
Hmm.
I'm thinking an example for this woman who I was talking to, and she worked on a reception of an office. So her job is to talk to couriers and people coming up to the building who are going to meetings and things like that. And she was being harassed by this guy that just kept coming in and saying disgusting things to her, and wouldn't leave her alone. And when you're a receptionist, your job is to be nice to everybody and smile and
Yeah.
do all that. And she would, and to kind of take a lot of the shit, right? And she was finding it so difficult to um to stop that situation. And then that it kind of occurred to me that this is a real issue, that the employer can turn around and just say, well, those people aren't our employees, we can't stop them
Hmm.
doing that. So yeah, so just purely from a
Mhm.
legal point of view,
Yes.
there is an overlap, but just more generally, this is all about the continuum of violence against women in every sector. And I think what's so interesting about my work as well is just actually a lot of the women who have called us have had consensual relationships with the people who are now harassing them, which I think is a bit of
Mm.
a less understood phenomenon.
Mhm.
But people are having romantic relationships or sexual relationships with people they work with, right? We know that
Yeah.
people do that all the time. So it shouldn't surprise us that some of those relationships can become, break down or become abusive or coercive. And then
Mhm.
you might be in a coercive relationship with someone that you are also working with. Um,
Yeah.
so it's
Gotta
just
get
so
rid
odd.
of this Puritan, like, oh, this poor young woman has nothing, like in that there is complexity within that, but there isn't a complexity of violence, of harassment, of the behaviors that we know, connotate and fit within that and need proper, interventions and policies and
And
processes.
there is such shame as well, the shame that women carry, especially, like, they will not want to say that, "Yes, I kissed him once at the Christmas party," or "We were seeing each other at one time," because I d and but now that person is harassing me,
Mhm.
and there is not an acknowledgement that, you can be harassed by someone you've had a consensual relationship with. It's there is a, women who tell they're really afraid that that's gonna count against them,
Right.
which is bonkers, right? Because why should anyone harass you? And especially if you've had a relationship with them, it doesn't give them permission to now, um, make your life difficult professionally, or, we
Absolutely.
see it it's
It's that pyramid, that rape culture pyramid. I'll have to post it sooner. I was gonna write about that, but just that, there is these beliefs that feed into this understanding that people have that, sexual harassment is somehow, kind of just part and partial of kind of growing up and working in different places and being around different types of people and cultures, and that there's a tolerance for that, but there really isn't. And whether or not you're in a relationship, whether or not you did have consensual, like, sexual relationships, or not, like, it really still needs
Mhm.
to. I think the work that you're doing is so important because you have the authority and, probably really give a lot of people validation of that their experiences are just, that they don't need to, kind of justify it or feel bad about, they had nothing to do with the situation that they're now in. There's,
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
consequences that should be there.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge problem with sexual harassment as well. There's so much internalized victim blaming. So, women constantly saying to me on the phone, "Oh, I didn't say no," because it's written somewhere that you are supposed to say no. I don't know where this has come from, but this is what we believe, right? All the onus is on the woman to be
Mhm.
rebuffing these advances, and when you're in a power dynamic with somebody that can have influence over your career and your performance reviews and your salary and you know, it's the most normal thing in the world that you're not going to want to antagonize that person by rebuffing them or threatening or, making them feel rejected. So much of harassment is women placating advances or laughing things off, or that's the reality of it. Women aren't screaming, "No, leave me alone." They're kind of, they're placating these people because that's the power they have over that person. I don't We don't get calls from women who are being sexually harassed by people who have less power than them. It's
Mhm.
always, they have more power, whether that be in a they are more superior in kinds of the job structure role, or they have more what we call perceived power. So they're very popular in the organization, or they've been there a really long time, whereas the woman's only been there a few months. You know, nobody's going to kind of side with her compared to someone that's been there 20 years. So yeah, so it's understanding how all these power
Mm,
dynamics, recognizing them, understanding them, and even seeing how they interplay. Um, and that's really difficult to do. It's really intangible stuff, you know.
mhm.
You need to kind of unfortunately, educate people on these things, because obviously we have a long way to go to make people understand that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Well, I'm conscious of your time, and would really love to hear, what other exciting things are coming up with the rights of women or any of the other projects that you're involved in. How can people find you, and what kind of exciting things can they look forward to seeing from you?
I've got an exciting thing coming up, but I don't want to spoil it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, what I would say is follow us on Instagram, at Rights of Women 175, and just stay tuned.
Perfect. We can make sure to link to that. And yeah, whenever
Yeah,
you're ready to share, we will also amplify in whatever way we can. But thank you so much. This was excellent. And if anyone has any particular questions, can we tweet out, or can they get in touch with you over social media? How's the best?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, social media, everything, just I'm on everything, and Rights Women is on everything. Um, yes, and let's just stay in touch, because I think it's so important that we kind of keep this community. You know, we are a community in the, you know, that's how we found each other, right? We are in this sexual harassment community, and it's so important that we ask our questions and get our information out there and keep that going, because it gives me a lot of strength, and
Yeah.
it makes me feel very positive about the future. And our WhatsApp group, people can join the WhatsApp group I set up.
Yes, that's been so amazing. 'Cause there's been people from all over the world that have joined that, and just working in really incredible organizations, or artists, or activists in different ways. So yeah, please let us know if that's something you want to jump into as well. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Siva. This was excellent. And yeah, we're looking forward to your big news. And thank you so much for your time and coming on, and all the things that you're doing. You're really pioneering so much work, and just your voice and authority, especially to young women, is just really powerful. I know it's making a huge difference. And this is only really just the beginning for all of the other things to come. So we're really happy to have you on the show, and be in
Thank
touch
you
with
so much
you.
for having me. Thank you.
All right. Have a great afternoon, and happy Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween. Bye.
Bye.